So both sides, remember that there's a sanctification of Eretz Israel. And we were trying to figure out what the conditions, what's the agent that engenders that satisfaction, that sanctification. And we said that there's a fundamental difference between what's called the first Kiddush at the hands of the Shulchan, as opposed to the second at the hands of Ezra and Nehemiah. The first Kiddush, it's the conquering of the land that generates the Kedusha. Remember that?
Right.
Kiddush. And if there's a second Kiddush that undermines our Kiddush, that means if the Nebuchadnezzar Melech Bavel now conquers the land, then the Kedusha is completely terminated. The second Kiddush, on the other hand, was by Ezra and Nehemiah, and that's called a Kiddush, not a Kiddush, but a Chazakah, which we said was settling the land. And we pointed out that the second Beis Hamikdash was a reflection of the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael and the Kedusha of Mikdash of the second Commonwealth, with regard to which we wrote on the blackboard here, Kitchel L'Shaitim V'Kitchel L'Yosim. So that's an eternal Kedusha that's not it doesn't terminate. Zechariah Novi was confused when he saw a vision of a beautiful second Beis Hamikdash, when he knew very well that the second Beis Hamikdash was being, will fall shy of the first Beis Hamikdash, and this was something glorious. And the Malach explained to him that the second Beis Hamikdash is really the beginning of the third Beis Hamikdash, because that second Beis Hamikdash it doesn't leave. Now, the sanctity of Eretz Yisrael in the second Kedusha is an eternal sanctity. In other words, lo tisbatel, it will not become batel. And the reason for that, according to Reb Chaim, is because the second Kedusha of Ezra and Nehemiah of Chazakah begins with a hub and then it moves out to the periphery. What is that hub? Do you remember? The Beis Hamikdash. So from the Beis Hamikdash, which is Kitchel L'Shaitim V'Kitchel L'Yosim Locho, that means that even after the Beis Hamikdash is destroyed, the location of the Beis Hamikdash remains sanctified, because that's the Shekhinah, the Kedusha of Shekhinah. That Kedusha, in a sense, expands to encompass all of Eretz Yisrael. So Eretz Yisrael has the Kedusha of Beis Hamikdash. That's more or less a summary of what we discussed last time. Any questions so far? Or we're okay? All right. So now we're going to start. You'll see 2 pages in front of you, like one page which is divided into 2 parts, a right side and a left side. And the left side will be called page Ayin Zayin, 77. On the bottom of page Ayin Zayin, we have a very important addition. Now, to explain that addition, we'll give the following introduction based on a Mishnah in Masechta Kelim. That Mishnah outlines 10 levels of Kedusha. And the first level of Kedusha is what's called Bein HaKruvim, meaning in the Kodesh Kadosh. And then it goes down, down, down. The last level, the last rung on the ladder, so to speak, is going to be the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. So again, you start with the Kodesh Kadoshim, you count 10 different levels of Kedusha until you reach Eretz Yisrael. Now, in order to demonstrate that Eretz Yisrael has Kedusha, the Mishnah in Masechta Kelim quotes the halach of Omer and Shtei Alechem. Does anybody know when we bring the Omer? Yeah, it's on the second day of Pesach, on the 16th day of Nisan. And when do we bring the Shtei Alechem? On Chag HaShvuos. So Rav Soloveitchik is very bothered by this Mishnah. If the Mishnah wants to show us and demonstrate that Eretz Yisrael is sanctified in a unique way, and its sanctity goes beyond that of any nation, any land on the world, then why didn't the Mishnah quote all the different mitzvos hatluyos ba'aretz, all those special mitzvos that only apply in the land? And that you'll see on the top of the next page, you flip it over. You'll see, I said, that Rav Soloveitchik gives a whole list. He has Trumos, Maestros, Chala, Shemitah, Yovel, Leket, Shichaber. All these mitzvahs only apply in Eretz Yisrael. That proves and demonstrates that there's a special high-level Kedusha to Eretz Yisrael. Why did the Mishnah have to quote two seemingly insignificant halachas, that the Omer is brought from Eretz Yisrael, the Shtei Alechem is brought from Eretz Yisrael? What about all these fundamental mitzvahs that are totally limited and dependent upon Eretz Yisrael? There are two sanctities to Eretz Yisrael. One is the sanctity of the karka, of the land itself, and the other is the sanctity of the Beis HaMikdash. The Mishnah in Kalim that lists 10 levels of Kedusha, beginning with the Kodesh Kadashim, is telling you and establishing how the Kedusha of Beis HaMikdash spreads, expands, until it encompasses all of Eretz Yisrael. That's a different level of Kedusha. That's not the level of Kedusha Sa'aretz, of Karka, of the land. That's the level of Eretz Yisrael that represents the Beit HaMikdash. And if you take a look here, he says that the Ikar and the Shoresh, this is on line 5, the fundamental source and root for all these 10 levels of Kedusha is the Kodesh Kadashim, between the Kruvim, which is called Ben Avadim. So it goes from there and spreads. As it spreads, it's sort of diffused a little bit, it goes down a bit, right? It depreciates in its sanctity until it reaches all of Eretz Yisrael. So it goes from the Kodesh Kadashim and then to the Heichal, and then to the Azara, and so forth and so on. The last level, the last rung on the ladder is going to be what? When you start from, when you start from Kodesh Kadosh, it's going to be Eretz Yisrael. And that's the Kedusha of Mikdash. Eretz Yisrael has the sanctity of Mikdash. When we're in Eretz Yisrael, we are in the Mikdash. Has nothing to do with Trumos and Maestros, etc. Because those are mitzvos. The sanctity that generates those mitzvahs is the sanctity of the karka, without any connection to the Beis HaMikdash. So the Mishnah looks to show you that Eretz Yisrael has a connection to the Mikdash, and it quotes the Omer and the Shtei Alechem, both of which can be brought only from Tevuas Eretz Yisrael. Omer is brought from barley, Shtei Alechem from wheat, but it's got to be homegrown in the land. Otherwise, it can't be brought on the Mizbeach as part of the Avodas HaMikdash. So it means that the Kedusha of Mikdash in Eretz Yisrael expresses itself in these two mitzvahs of Omer and Shtei Alechem. They are the proof that Eretz Yisrael has the sanctity of Beis HaMikdash. So you might want to underline the following sentence: Shekol Eretz Yisrael Mekudeshet B'Kedushas Mikdash B'Zeir Anpin. Zeir Anpin means in a small reflection.
Zeir reflection. What's reflection?
No, I'm using the word reflection liberally. I'm taking a poetic license. Zeir Anpin. Anpin is the countenance, and Zeir is the smaller countenance. These are Kabbalistic concepts about the divinity. But what it means in this context is like a mini image of something, a smaller image. Eretz Yisrael reflects a smaller image of the Beit HaMikdash. And that's the sanctity of Eretz Yisrael.
Isn't that
And how do I know that Eretz Yisrael has the sanctity of Beit HaMikdash? Shemevi'im mimena ha'omer u'shtei alechem. Because these are part of the avodah of the Beit HaMikdash, and they must be brought from where? Eretz Yisrael. However, the Chiv, Trumas, and Maisu, Shvita, V'Yovel, etc., those are mitzvahs hatluyos the Karka Eretz Yisrael. And the reason why you don't find these mitzvahs in Chutz La'aretz is because Chutz La'aretz doesn't have the Karka of Eretz Yisrael, that sanctity of Kedushas Haaretz. But it has nothing to do with the fact that Eretz Yisrael has b'miktas in a small way, an image, a reflection of Kedushas Mikdash.
To an extent, if the Jews would have gone to Uganda, would the Rav have argued that we should have done Shuma there, the mindset?
For sure not, because there's no Kedushas Haaretz in Uganda. And no way you can set up Kedushas Haaretz.
How does it, he's defining, the thought process is, I'm definitely misunderstanding the Rav, but it doesn't make any sense. Like,
Yeah.
the land is holy from the Mikdash makes the land holy.
No. There are two different sanctities. And they're fundamentally different. And they emanate from two different sources. One is Kedushas Mikdash, and that spreads throughout to encompass all of Eretz Yisrael. So Eretz Yisrael has Kedushas Mikdash. And there's Kedushas Haaretz, which is in the land. That emanates from the land itself.
And is that Kedusha Shmiya Kadsha Lots Lava? That Kedusha Karka?
In the second Kedusha, that of Ezra and Nehemiah, we're going to pass in the Kitshel Shaita and Kitshel Yosid Lo.
But the Karka itself, it falls into the same categories of the first one it was Krush, and then the second one it was Tzaka. So therefore the first one it lost Kedusha Karka. So both because we lost Bismillah, we lost that Kedusha and we lost Karka, and the second one we only lost Karka. We didn't lose either because of because of that. Okay.
Right, because we're going to say that when there's a chazaka that engenders kedusha to the land, that's eternal and will never terminate. Okay. So today in Eretz Yisrael we have two kedushas. We have the kedushas Mikdash, which expands to all of Eretz Yisrael, and we have kedushas Karka, which generates a chiyuv of Trumas and Maasros, like in Shikha, Shmita V'Yovel, etc. So we have both.
So if it
Both
has,
sanctities.
if it has both, does that like, is it like a double, is it like extra holy for?
Right. Right? Eretz Yisrael has a double kedusha, two dimensions of kedusha. And what does that mean is-
Both, or no, because in the first temple period, we had conquering and the temple, so it's the same as the first temple period,
Correct.
it's the level that we're at now.
Correct.
And what is that, like, it just means that we have more obligations related
Yeah,
to Eretz
for
Yisrael.
example, as far as Mikdash is concerned, Eretz Yisrael is the extension of Mikdash. If I can bring Omer and Shtei Aleph in the Mikdash from anywhere from Eretz Yisrael. Number two, I'm obligated in the mitzvahs hatluyos ba'aretz, meaning the karka, like Trumas and Maasros, etc., anywhere in Eretz Yisrael, because of the kedushas karka.
But are we today obligated in something like that because of
Well,
the
there may be
Kedusha
technical.
of the Mikdash, because we don't actually have the
Yeah,
Mikdash, right?
in every case, you have to study it unto itself. There are technicalities. Why? For example, in Truma, you need what's called bias kulchen. In other words, you need that the settlement of the land includes most of the Jews on the face of the earth. Or for example, in Shmita V'Yovel, there are other conditions. You need a counting, unbroken counting of the Shnos HaYovel. And at some point, when we went into Golos, we discontinued that count. So again, in every one of the mitzvahs ba'aretz, you'll have to study each one. That's what 1/6 of Shas is called Zroim. And in Zroim, that's what you'll have to study, each one of the different. But as far as the Kedushas Haaretz, meaning the land, definitely we have that condition has been fulfilled. Because we're going to pass in that Kitshel Shaita, the Kitshel Yosef.
What not from the Shita, and that's basically it. Or Shita, no, that's even apply to we lost it.
Again, you have to go through each one of them. Let's take Maser.
But we did lose the Shemitah year, I thought we still had Shemitah years.
again, I'm not prepared to address that question, but that
Cause I remember.
requires
didn't we have
hours
one-
and hours
didn't
of
we have one
study.
A few years ago.
Yes and no, I mean, tremendous controversies about it.
Oh, really? I didn't know.
Yeah, many would say that Shemitah today is only D'Rabbanan. It's a rabbinic kind of memory, we remember Shemitah, but it's not the real Shemitah. For that, you have to learn, Masechet Shvius, it's a whole set of that. We're just trying to get a vision, a picture of what Kedusha applies to Eretz Yisrael. Okay then?
Yeah.
Now, it's interesting. Bikurim, which means to bring your first fruits, only applies in Eretz Yisrael. But we're not sure why. There are two possible answers why Bikurim is limited to Eretz Yisrael. One answer could be Kedushas Migdash, and the other could be Kedushas Ha'aretz. Why do I say Kedushas Migdash? Because it had to be brought on the Mizbeach in the temple. So it could be that Bikurim is coming from anywhere in Eretz Yisrael, because all of Eretz Yisrael is sanctified with Kedushas Migdash, B'miktas, such that we can take the barley from Eretz Yisrael for the Omer, we can take the wheat that grows in Eretz Yisrael for the Shtei Alechet, and we can take our first fruits to the Beis HaMikdash, Bikurim.
Right.
So what then generates the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael for the mitzvah Bikurim? Beis HaMikdash. But there's another possibility, that it could be that Bikurim is generated by Kedushas Ha'aretz. It's like Trumas U'Maisros. So, for example, in the Mishnah in Kelim that we spoke about, Eser Kedushos, which begins with Kodesh Kadoshim and terminates with Eretz Yisrael, and all those 10 are 10 different levels of Beis HaMikdash, going from the most intense and the most profound level of Kedusha all the way down to the, so to speak, the watered down Kedusha, but nevertheless the Kedusha of Mikdash. Does Bikurim belong on that list? Would Bikurim be a proof that Eretz Yisrael has Kedushas Mikdash? Correct. And
Is there a way to actually, does he like answer it? Is there a way?
he says that there's a girsa, according to one text in the Mishnah in Kelim that we spoke about. It says, Shekain Meviim Omer, Shtei Alechem, Ubikurim Mein Eretz Yisrael. What does that prove about the mitzvah Bikurim? What Kedusha? It's Kedusha's Migdash that generates Bikurim. But others remove that girsa. They don't have the word Bikurim in our Mishnah. That Mishnah doesn't say Bikurim. Because they held the Bikurim is like Trumas and Maisus and Shemitah and Yovel. It's a Kedushas Ha'aretz, which again is irrelevant to the Mishnah of Kelim, which is establishing the Kedusha of Migdash as far as Eretz Yisrael is.
Why does that issue not apply to the Omer and Shelah? Meaning,
Because again, there are no mitzvahs that apply to the Omer per se when it grows. The Omer, when it grows, can be kosher, can be used, it's valid for the Omer in the Beis HaMikdash.
or just use stock. Unless it's
Right,
native.
you could eat it for lunch or for, if you like mushroom balls, but you know what I mean? It has no sanctity unto itself. Therefore, it's not like Trumas and Maisros, which is what's at least for artists. But the very fact that you can take any barley that grew anywhere in Eretz Yisrael and use it on the Mizbeach, that itself proves that Eretz Yisrael has the Kedusha of Mikdash. What about Bikurim? And that's the two yourselves with regard to Bikurim. Now on the bottom of page Ayin Ches, which is your right column, he has a Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi says that Yerushalayim has a greater sanctity than any other city. And how do we know this? Because of the halacha of Kodshei Kodshim, Kodshim Kalim, and Meiser Shem. So let's take Kodshim Kalim. You know that Kodshim on the Mizbeach is divided into two categories. is what's called Kodesh Kadoshim, Kodesh Kodshim, and then it's called Kodshim Kalam. Now, Kodesh Kodshim can only be eaten in the Azor, which is like the inner sanctum of the Mikdash. Whereas Kodesh Kalam, like Shlomim, or Korban Pesach, or Bechor, Ma'aser Behema, that could be eaten anywhere in Yerushalayim.
When we say you're trying to make the old city.
Correct. Now, what sanctifies Yerushalayim and makes it greater in sanctity than any other city on the face of the earth? Mikdash. How then is the Mishnah going to prove that Yerushalayim has a Kedushas Mikdash?
Yeah.
Again, if I want to prove that Yerushalayim has a Kedushas Mikdash, what halacha would prove that?
Kachim Kala.
Excellent, Kodshim Kalam. The fact that Kodshim Kalam could be eaten anywhere in Yerushalayim means that that's an extension of the Beis HaMikdash. So we now have an Afkamina that parallels Eretz Yisrael in the case of Yerushalayim. Just like Eretz Yisrael has two dimensions of Kedusha, one dimension of which is Kedushas Mikdash, because that Kedusha Mikdash spreads throughout the land of Israel. So too Yerushalayim has two different statusi. A status of Kedusha because it's a beautiful city, because it's a defense capital of Israel, it's Mukefes Choma. And then it has another Kedusha, that's Mikdash. So that when the Mishnah wants to prove that Yerushalayim has a Kedushas Mikdash, that makes it unique on the face of the globe in terms of any other city, it's going to quote the halacha of Kodshim Kalam. That Kodshim Kalam can be eaten anywhere in Yerushalayim. That's Mikdash. Or, for example, Ma'aser Sheni. Ma'aser Sheni means the fruit and the grains that grew in Eretz Yisrael on the first, second, fourth, and fifth years of the Shmita cycle. I have to bring them to Yerushalayim. I can't eat them outside of Yerushalayim. I can do what's called pidyon, but I have to eat them in Yerushalayim. It means that Ma'aser Sheni has to be brought to the Beis HaMikdash, not literally the Beis HaMikdash, but something that reflects a dimension of the Kedusha Beis HaMikdash, namely Yerushalayim. So Yerushalayim also has another dimension to it, just like Eretz Yisrael has a dimension of Kedushas Mikdash, and that we proved from Omer and Shtei Alechem. So I meant to say Eretz Yisrael. What did I say? Again, let me say it again. Just like Eretz Yisrael has a Kedushas Mikdash, and we proved that from Omer and Shtei Alechem, so too Yerushalayim has a Kedushas Mikdash, and we're going to prove that from Ma'aser Sheni and Kodshim Kalam.
And we also prove it from the Gemara where you're supposed to face one doctrine. It says like if you're like outside of Israel, then you face Israel. If you're in Israel, then you face Jerusalem. If you're in Jerusalem, then you face the temple.
Very good.
Temple
Excellent.
is the Kodesh
I
God.
like that idea.
So wouldn't that also be a
Could be.
That Gemara is like a nice stadium. It's not like we follow it like a lot. It's not like
Right.
a
Right, but it could be a reflection of
But
the
then it's like-
Kedushas
same
Mikdash of
Yeah.
Yerushalayim. It very well might be. So let me ask you a question. You speak about the old city. You know that there are motivated that when you see a city that's Kareva means desolate, Jewish city, Yechayev in Kriya. How do you spell Kriya, with an aleph or an ayin? With an ayin, Kriya, you have to render your garments.
Yes.
Okay, now, after the 6-Day War, we took over Yerushalayim. Now Yerushalayim is under Israeli dominion, correct? We have,
More of that, yes.
okay, let's say. So it's already a rebuilt city. I mean, you can go to the old city of Yerushalayim and you can see buildings and shuls and schools. There's a whole settlement in the old city. Does that mean, therefore, it's no longer Bechur Banat, and therefore the halacha, the requirement of Kriya, no longer applies to Yerushalayim?
to Yerushalayim, but not to the temple.
Right, if you see now.
But what do we say about Kedushas Yerushalayim? Where does it emanate from?
It emanates from Parabayas, but those.
It emanates right from the
That's
Mikdash.
like, that's what we
And
see,
then
that
it's
makes
not
it
right.
compare over all of Israel, because if we say that the emanation from Paradise happened during the second Beit HaMikdash. So that means either you would have to tear, and no matter where you go in Israel, and it would apply to every single city and place that we hold as like Kedusha, because they would all be considered dead.
If you could find an ancient city, let's say Tveria, I don't know, maybe Tveria is an ancient city. And now it's Bechurban, because we don't have the Kedusha anymore, then you might be Chayv in Korea. But the classic example is Yerushalayim, that's brought down in Halacha and Shulchan Aruch HaChaim, that when you get to Yerushalayim, you kind of go to Korea.
But no, isn't it once you see our bias, not once you get through Shine? I definitely don't know something like that.
Yeah, well,
Where it's probably-
again, well, you know what, we'll research that, believe it, but I think it's anything that is a continuous issue from the Harabites, meaning it goes even beyond the Harabites.
So you're saying that
As long as it's
because the
beyond-
Paradise has been rebuilt and Jerusalem was part of the Paradise, even just seeing the very outskirts of Paradise, we have to tear.
You're coming
Because
from
that very edge of
Yeah,
Paradise.
so after the 6 Day War, when Yerushalayim started to be resettled, there was a rabbi, I'm not gonna mention his name, and he said, we no longer have to cut Kriya on Yerushalayim.
Who told me to?
Do you wanna see that inside? Here, take a look on page Ayin Tes, on the left column, do you see that? He says,
Seven?
just 1 second, Ayin Tet, right, that's on the left side, let me just focus in on. He says, Bizmana said on the second line, Sha'ir ha'atikah hitachat yad malchut Yisrael. Right, it's under the dominion of the state of Israel, the Olech Nation, and we're rebuilding.
They call it
the-
Israel, or they have another name for it.
For what?
Israel itself, in other words, like in the olden times. In other words, like how the Romans renamed to Palestine, but was there a name before it besides for Israel?
Again, it was called Eretz Yisrael, as far as I know, maybe you know something I don't. So again, do we cut Kriya when we see Yerushalayim today because it's Bechurbanah? Right, so now we're rebuilding the old city. Says Rav Soloveitchik, Adayin Dinok Yerushalayim Bechurbanah. We are required to do Kriya because it's still considered Chareba.
When we say,
Well,
Yeah.
why is it considered Chareba? After all, we're rebuilding
we
it.
don't have mixed.
Exactly. The Takanas Chazal, Lekroa, Kshiro Imit Yerushalayim B'Churbanai Tabekesh Yerushalayim B'Toras Migdash Kedushas Migdash.
Then what,
We don't have the Migdash.
but then what, Asher, right, I'm not, I don't know, I didn't, I'm not bad. But Adam said, if we go to Hebron, then we should still tear Kriya. Nowadays.
Could be. I don't know. You have to look it up. I would say that
I mean, according to the Shita, it doesn't matter if we rebuild as long as the Kedusha from the Mikdash isn't here.
that's as far as Yerushalayim.
But
So
It may
he's saying,
be-
so I asked him this before, he's saying the difference with Yerushalayim is that it's not that it's an old city like Hebron that has its Kedusha from the temple. It's that it's physically Yerushalayim is physically part of the temple, which is the argument.
how could you say that?
If-
It's the outskirts
What I'm saying
of
is
the
this.
temple.
If you resettle Hebron, it could be you don't have to cut Kriya anymore. Why? Because it's not Bechurbanah. But Rav Soloveitchik is saying that when they made a takana that if you see Yerushalayim Bechurbanah, you have to cut Kriya. What they meant was that since there's no Mikdash, therefore Yerushalayim is considered Bechurbanah. Because the sanctity of Yerushalayim that generates Kriya
Doesn't that,
is the sanctity of Mikdash.
doesn't that disagree with our mission that says there's 10 levels of Kedusha and Yerushalayim is on the lower levels of Mikdash?
Correct, but it has some element of Mikdash. All 10 levels are all Kedushas Mikdash. The
Right.
common denominator of all 10 is Kedushas Mikdash. And even Eretz Yisrael, which is the 10th on the lowest rung, it has Kedushas Mikdash. Yerushalayim is on the list and it has Kedushas Mikdash.
And when
But
we,
what happens if there's no Mikdash?
when we say tear Kriya, that means if only if we haven't seen it in 30 days, right? Well,
he says on the next paragraph that after the 6-Day War, somebody wanted to change the nusach of Nachem. When do we say Nachem?
Shabbos, Haftorah, before, like Nachamu?
No, not Nachem. Nachem is the paragraph that we had on Tisha B'Av.
Yeah.
To the Mincha of Tisha B'Av. Now that prayer of Nachem is a lamentation over the Churban of Yerushalayim. So somebody wanted to say, how can you talk about Yerushalayim as Beli Baneha, Hareva, Avela? How can we say those words? It's no longer true. We have rebuilt Yerushalayim. And he wanted to change the nusach.
So it's like we have.
Yeah, he doesn't
we
tell
haven't
you
fully
today.
built Jerusalem.
What?
We haven't fully built Jerusalem.
Why not?
Because we're still missing.
Exactly, as long as we don't have the Mikdash, then it's considered Bechareva. It's Bechurbanah because the Kedusha of Yerushalayim is the Kedusha of the Beis HaMikdash. We don't have the Beis HaMikdash. I'll tell you honestly where I get confused with this.
If we were to rebuild the Beit HaMikdash, but it still wasn't like. I guess like kosher, like no longer impure, would that still count as rebuilding it, or would it have to be rebuilding it into functionality?
It must be that count, because the second day, something that we have all the Kalim, and we didn't have the Mer.
Right, but we don't have a part in what we kind of do, it's debated.
What you really have to study here is the laws of Mizpeh, because the Beis HaMikdash has to have a Mizpeh. And there are certain, technical rules and conditions that apply to Mizpeh.
So like as long as we had it as that, like technically, then that would count as rebuild.
Could be,
Interesting.
and we need the walls of the Beis HaMikdash and the Mizpeh.
You
We
need
wouldn't
just,
do anything else.
I'll tell you where I get confused here. And I never got a chance to ask my Rebbe this question, but we said that Eretz Yisrael is sanctified even today because
The second.
Kedushas Migdash, Kitchel Shaita, Vikitchel V'Yasima.
Right.
But Shechina Eina B'Teil L'Olam. So that would mean that even after the Churban, we still have the Kedushas Makom of the Beis HaMikdash. Why isn't that enough to sanctify Yerushalayim?
Right.
If Yerushalayim and Eretz Yisrael have to some extent Kedushas Migdash, and the Kedushas Migdash is a result of the Shechina, then is the Shechina still there, even after Churban? Just give me 1 second to think about it. Do you mind? I'm trying to. Yeah, go ahead. I think I have an idea of what we're
I
saying
thought
right now.
Brendan answered that with, or similar to what we asked about the cities of Korba. There's a certain level of Kedusha that Yerushalayim needs with the Beis HaMikdash, that there's lower levels of Kedusha that apply everywhere else in Eretz Yisrael. That the Makom Mikdash works, but without, that's all you need. But for Yerushalayim and other places, you need the actual Mikdash itself.
That's exactly what I was going to say. There are two Kedushos to Mikdash. There's Kedushas Makom, and that's generated by Shechina. And then there's Kedushas Binyan Yerushalayim, the chomos of the Beis HaMikdash, the walls of the Beis HaMikdash. And I think what Rav Soloveitchik is saying is that as far as Kedushas Migdash, which expands, you need the binyan of the Beis HaMikdash. As far as Kedushas Makom is concerned, all you need is the Makom Beis Hamikdash. You don't even need the Binyan Beis Hamikdash. So with Churban, the Binyan Beis Hamikdash goes down. But the Makom Hamikdash, insofar as it's Makom Hashchina, that remains. The Kedusha of Yerushalayim, which generates Kriya because of Churban, depends upon the Binyan of Bayis, not the Makom. One second, let's see if we can finish this off. But in terms of Kedushas Haaretz, is the Kedushas Makom is enough to sanctify the land. But 1 second, we said there's a second sanctity to Eretz Yisrael, and that's Kedushas Mikdash. For that, we need the binyan of the Mikdash. So with Churban, Eretz Yisrael would forfeit its Kedushas binyan, but it still has Kedushas Makom. Just give me a minute. I want to see if I can. Yes, we're saying that the Kedushas Eretz Yisrael as a Kedushas Mikdash itself subdivides into two parts, and that's Kedushas Makom and Kedushas Binyan Mikdash. The concept of Churban is related to Kedushas Binyan Mikdash, and if the Binyan Mikdash is gone, then that Kedushas Mikdash is completely terminated. But we still have Kedushas Makom. So that element of Kedushas Eretz Yisrael as Mikdash still exists even after Churban without the binyan, and it's generated by the Makom. In the case of Yerushalayim, we need the higher level of Kedusha of Mikdash, of Binyan HaMikdash. And in the absence of Binyan HaMikdash, the city is called Chareva, and therefore we're chayav in Kriya. And again, why? Because we're lacking the Kedushas Binyan of the Mikdash. Does Yerushalayim still have Kedusha? So let's just think. Would we be able to eat Maser Sheni in Yerushalayim today? And I'm saying the following, that if that Kedushas Mikdash is generated by the Binyan HaMikdash, we don't have the Binyan HaMikdash, and therefore we cannot eat Maser Sheni in Yerushalayim. But if you ask me a different question, and that is, does Yerushalayim have a special Kedusha to it that's generated by Mikdash? That could be the Kedushas Makom, which was Kitchel L'Shaitim v'Kitchel L'Yosin Loco, which is the Makom Hashchina that spreads out to encompass all of Yerushalayim. The only question is, why not Yamina? How does that cut ice, as we say? How does that
Why
generate a different din?
Why is Rebbe saying that Yerushalayim has a special Kedusha compared to the rest of Israel nowadays? Meaning, I don't know exactly how the Mishnah works, but let's pretend that.
Yeah, let's see. It says Yerushalayim Mekudeshes Mishar Ayoros Sha'ochlim Right. So Bisman Hazeh, does Yerushalayim have a special Kedusha?
I would think that Yerushalayim falls in the next category. Meaning, I don't know what the exact Mishnah.
But 1 second, if Eretz Yisrael has Kedusha, that's called Kedusha L'Shaitim Kedusha L'Sim.
Right.
Even though we don't have the Mikdash, but we have the Makom HaMikdash, why not say the same thing for Yerushalayim? Well, why should Yerushalayim be inferior to the totality of Eretz Yisrael? Meaning, if the totality of Eretz Yisrael has a Kedusha that's generated by Mikdash, even B'Churban, so why not say the same thing about Yerushalayim? But there's a higher level of Kedushas Yerushalayim of Mikdash, and that's generated by the binyan itself, by the physical structure of the temple, which we don't have. And that lowers the level of Kedusha of Yerushalayim today. It's no longer 100%, called 50%, and it's called the Churbana. And the Churbana is a result of the fact that we don't have the binyan abayis today. Now, in the case of Eretz Yisrael, we could suggest that the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael today, as far as Mikdash is concerned, is not a complete Kedusha, because we're lacking the walls, the chomos of the Beis HaMikdash. But nevertheless, since the Macham HaMikdash is still sanctified today, therefore Eretz Yisrael still has unique sanctity. And then we have to ask ourselves the following question. What is that unique sanctity of Eretz Yisrael? Is it Kedushas HaOretz, or is it Kedushas Mikdash?
Mikdash, just all over it's Israel.
No, it's Kedushas Mikdash, the room, but it's not, like you can say. Meaning, once we have the Chazak in place, now there's this concept of Kedusha Karka. That Kedusha Karka only comes around after the building of the base Mikdash. But the destruction doesn't take it away because of Yishuv.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. So I'm trying to figure out.
But it can't be the
Let's say-
Kedusha of Eretz, because
Let's say,
all over.
let's say, for example, until Shlomo Melech built the Mikdash, from Yoshua to Shlomo. So at that point, it wasn't Kedusha Eretz Yisrael.
But that was from Kibush.
Okay, but still, it seems that was Kedushas HaOretz, meaning Karka. And therefore, the B'Trumas of Maestros during that entire period, even before the Mikdash was built.
In
I
Echanami,
think.
there was no
Truman and Meister were basically just like taxes for the being of the Kohanim, so they really needed that, especially when they didn't give the
Right,
lady on the land, so.
But I'm
makes
saying
sense.
that if there's Trumas of Maestros, you can tell me why we need it, but that must presume that there's Kedushas HaOretz and there's no Mikdash. So there is a Kedushas HaOretz without Mikdash.
Well, we
And
we can decide
presumably that
from even.
Kedushas HaOretz without Mikdash,
No, that Kedushas Haaretz without Mikdash stems from Kibush.
okay,
And we lost that. Now, the second time around, there was no point where we were living in Eretz Yisrael without the base Mikdash. Meaning we came back and rebuilt it. Tell me if I'm wrong. But we came back and rebuilt it. So the second one, the Kedusha Karka, stems from the base Mikdash. So the first one, it doesn't,
well, again, but which dimension basically, the actual physical structure of the base of the Mikdash or the Shekhinah in the Makam HaMikdash, even after Churban. Because again, it seems to me that Eretz Yisrael was sanctified by that extra dimension of Kedushas Makam HaMikdash.
so could you say,
And the same thing with Torah should apply to Yerushalayim.
so could you say that it's the Yishuv in the time of Mikdash? The Chazaka Yishuv allows there to be a Shekhinah from the base of Mikdash that stays, even through Korban. That flow.
And even though the Chazaka was null and void, when we got sent by Titus into Golis, at the Arch of Titus, if I remember. So we went into Golis, and the issue was no longer an independent issue. Maybe there were scattered Jews here and there, but nevertheless, the Kedusha Mikdash as a Makam of Shekhinah continues to generate a Kedusha to Eretz Yisrael, even if there's not a single Jew in the land of Israel.
There's also never a point that there were no Jews, historically speaking.
Right, but again, I don't know if that still retains Chazak. I'm just saying. You could have argued that just like Kibush cancels Kibush, so then Golos cancels Chazak. But we're gonna say no, Golos doesn't cancel Chazak because that Chazak,
It's permanent.
correct, is permanent because it was engendered by the Kedusha of Shechin,
Right.
of Makam HaMikdash, which is Ein B'Tevul, never is terminated.
Yeah.
So that Eretz Yisrael still has a Kedusha. And the question is, what is the nature of that Kedusha? It wasn't Kedusha Sa'aretz, that for sure it is. But could we say it's even a higher level of Kedusha, Kedusha's bigger? But I'm suggesting that even if it's a higher level,
Parts that have Chazaka wouldn't face the land of Yerushalayim. That's what we were saying, if it's permanent, that means it would have a RSA because we reconquered the land. And it would have a Mikdash, because the Mikdash part was permanent, at least in the parts from the second Beit HaMikdash period, so like a lot wouldn't, but the like other parts would, like.
right, but I'm just wondering at what point does the kedusha get a little bit what's the word in English? Reduced, diluted. I like to use that word after Churban. Like for example, Yerushalayim was saying that to some extent the kedusha of Yerushalayim is diluted today because we don't have the big Dosh. And that's why we're kind of in Kriya, according to our salvation. Even if we settle in Yerushalayim, because we don't have the big Dosh. So I'm just wondering if we transfer that over to Eretz Yisrael, what the impact on Kedusha Eretz Yisrael, if any, does Churban have?
Could we try and build it back? Meaning we're going down the Kedusha list, why don't we go up? And say like, I don't know the exact mission, but like, let's see. Yerushalayim is the fourth holiest, or fifth holiest, and then there's 5 things that are less holy. So Kedusha's Eretz Yisrael from Yishuv is good, and Makom HaMikdash applies to those 5, and Makom HaMikdash applies to level of Kedusha to those 5, and they don't lose their Kedusha. The next 5, they get a level of Kedusha from Makom HaMikdash, but they don't get enough that elevates them above the other ones without bias.
So what's the conclusion? Are we saying that Yerushalayim after Churban does not have any special kedusha?
It has quasi state of Kedusha where it would be equal to the highest level of Kedusha you could have without Binyan HaMikdash, which applies to the other states of Kedusha, which applies to like Eretz Yisrael or whatever the other categories are. But it doesn't have enough Kedusha by itself without the Binyan HaMikdash.
Yeah, that could work. It's like, it has all the other Kedushas, and it has the potential for more, but it's totally rebuilding production. That's fully, it has like a remnant of it, but not enough to like really consider the level of this. So you wouldn't do, like you wouldn't be able to eat the korban. Obviously, you can't have the korban in the first place to eat, so you wouldn't be able to eat it today, even if somehow you could get around to actually doing it without this. So it's like that right now it would be equal to everywhere else, with the potential to be greater.
No, it would be equal to the lowest level that we still hit, to the highest level that we still can have.
Right.
So if I can see the mission side of it.
Yeah, do we have,
Do we
I
have
would say Kahati Mishnahs, I'm sure they have.
I'm sure they do, and I'm not so great at navigating Olympics. So.
Right.
I'll get one, which mission, no, is it Kalim, which one?
Yeah, it's a Mishnah Kalim. Perik,
Wasn't it right here?
Perik Perik Aleph, he doesn't tell you which Mishnah.
Mishnah, Kalim is in Zerayim yet?
No, Kalim is.
Caleb is Taurus.
Again, I think the best way of doing this is with that. I mean, that's very clear the way they printed it.
Alright. I said two most crucial in Adam, no. Oh, Esther Kedusha is pain, Eretz Yisrael, Mikdash, Kol Ha'aretzos.
Right, he's gone from the lowest to the highest.
Okay. Umahi Kedushasa, Mivien, Mimena, Ha'omer, Bekurim,
He has to give.
Bekurim, Ushne Alechem, She'en, Mivien, Kol, Kain, Kol Ha'aretzos. That's the whole mission. It doesn't go through the actual text. It's in the mission.
That might be elsewhere.
Right, okay, then.
Yeah.
I can't explain it clearly.
Closest that we can.
If I wasn't pressed for time, I would ask, any of the guys should know where Mishnah's Kahati is.
Check. I.
We don't have that much time.
But we'll find it before next time.
All right, tomorrow's the last time we meet, or?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, this was.
Right, because we don't know on Thursday.
All right, so we'll try to get a hold, I don't have Kahati in my house, maybe we'll find them here.
Well, if you're here till night Seder, we can find it right after class.
That would be great, I'll be back, oh, no, I'm not back tomorrow for night Seder, I'm back. I'm not back today for night Seder, I'm back tomorrow for night Seder.
Yeah, so that's not.
Find it.
I'd like to see it before we meet tomorrow in the afternoon, that would be great.
Yeah,
Send it for Abby.
Let me just, ask one of you guys, maybe.
Rob Beasley, you could probably help.
What was my thing? That there's a certain level of fuchsia that you can hit. I didn't want to say, because I don't want to.
So there's multiple levels, basically it starts at the Kodesh HaGashim and
Right.
it ends at Eretz Yisrael, so there's 10 levels from the Kodesh HaGashim to Eretz Yisrael.
Yeah.
And one of those levels, I think, is Jerusalem.
You find, yeah.
So then the question is, there's all the different levels that we're talking about, there's the holiness from the temple. And then there's the holiness innate to the land itself that comes from conquering the land.
Somebody's gonna give us, nice cue.
So then we have the permanence of, so we have the, we're like working back, so we have the 10 levels. One of the.
Nothing else?
Nice Caleb.
Yeah.
Please, so
Welcome.
Yeah, press the red button. See the red button? Yeah, I'll be there, yeah.
That's what we.
Oh. Let's see, I'll switch with the Zoom. Yeah.
So we have the levels. So we have the permanence of the settlement of the Zaka,
Right.
which comes from Bakum of Megdash, that is when they settled the land, so that one is always there. Then we also have the Kedusha of the Eretz, because we reconquered the land.
Right, no, not that we refound. What, no, that's kibush, that's from the first place we initiated, this is not by nowadays.
Do we not have any,
The second
there's no
level
kibush now?
going up is Ayoros and
The
Kofar
kibush
Stone.
next to it. Is the kibush connected to Kedusha, the Eretz?
Say again?
Is kibush connected to Kedusha Eretz today?
No.
Because we reconquered the land, I thought that was.
No, we did not reconquer.
Well, the second Kiddush
We didn't
was
do
through
Kiddush
Hazak.
We didn't do kibush properly, and we needed the arrow to lead us through.
Okay, so not, okay, but then the Kedusha of the Aretz was also already there.
We should be ours.
We also didn't reconquer the land.
Right, this would.
That's just maybe.
Okay, so we already have. From the Kedusha of the Aretz,
This is usually.
and then also Makom of Mikdash.
So it goes like this.
So those are.
Eretz Yisrael. The next level is Ayoros Hamukofos Chomo.
So walled cities.
Okay, again, you have to know more about that. And then the next level over
That would be
is Yerushalayim. And then from Yerushalayim we go to Arabais.
So,
And then we go to the Chel.
so, but bottom line is, we find that it is 8, meaning.
In front of the Yesus Noshik, there is Israel. And then we get to something called the Yesus Kohanim, then to the Beit Elon Mizbeach. And then we get to the Kedushas Eichel. And then we get to the Kodesh Kedoshim.
So Yerushalayim is like 8, meaning the only things that have less kedusha than Yerushalayim, Kal Yachol, is Eretz Yisrael and Arei Chomos.
Correct.
So
Aramon Kos.
the way I would interpret what we've learned is that Yerushalayim is like a regular Arei Chomos nowadays. as that level of kedusha, and you can't add beyond that level of kedusha of Arichoma until you have the actual binyan on Mikdash. Once you have the binyan on Mikdash, your shrine can get its status, and the Heichal can get its status, and the Kodesh Kodashim can get its status, and so on. Which makes sense because every other thing outside of your shrine is within the actual binyan of the Mikdash. But after your shrine, what's the next level of kedusha?
The temple.
The Har bias, and then after Har bias is within the actual structure of the base of Mikdash, right?
It's the hell. Let's see if he tells you what. Hell, he says, "Sheta shel Ezer Amos shebein Asorig u'Chomas Azor." I mean, for this you have to learn a simple tone, not just Hale.
Yeah, I mean,
Anyway, you keep getting higher and higher level of kedusha. Now the question is, how does Korban bias impact on all these kedushas? So on the one hand, we're saying that Shechina and B'Teiliol and Kitchen Shait and Kitchen Lesson Love. So there should be a kedushas and mikdash even without the physical structure of the mikdash. Maybe. Yeah, we're saying that in terms of Kriya, there would be a Kriya in Yerushalayim because the Mikdash is down. And Kitchel Shait and Kitchel Logo is not enough to remove that imperfection, so to speak, of Churban. Now, does that impact on the Kedusha of Yerushalayim as far as Kedusha's Mikdash is concerned? Like, theoretically, let's say we'd have to throw out a Mitzorah from Yerushalayim. He can't go in there because it's his, he has what's called a Tumah Chamur. And a Shalfim, Mitocham, Esam Mitzorah. So that might apply even after Chur. That's what I want to know.
why would that apply after Korban?
No, I'm just saying because it could be on a Doraisa level as far as Din and Doraisa. So we have Kitchel Shait to be Kitchel Asid Love, which means that the Kedushas Mikdash that spreads around, that's right, that diffuses and expands, might still be intact because of Kitchel Shait to Love, the Kitchel Asid Love, maybe because it's the Shechina Zayim B'Teil. As far as the Drabanan is concerned of Kriya, the Rabbanan established Kriya because of Kedushas Binyan Beis Hamikdash, which is called Yerushalayim Binyan Na. We don't have Yerushalayim Binyan Na because we don't have the Mikdash, and therefore Yerushalayim is B'Churban.
So I mean,
But I don't
still have the
know.
same status as.
But that's what I'm trying to figure out. Does that mean that the Kedusha of Yerushalayim as Mikdash is Pata because of Korban Habayis, or is it just a separate Allah of Yerushalayim B'Churbana?
In my opinion, it seems to be like separate, like I agree with Gabriel, it's that
I
Jerusalem has the potential for more with the Binyan Mikdash. Once we have that actual structure again, then it can become.
Materialized.
Right, it can actually materialize to the full extent, but I don't think that would exclude it from the other two Kedushim that it's possible reaching, which is Eretz and
So yeah,
Mikdash,
this was
from the
something
second base of
we're
Mikdash.
getting to the end.
It's like-
The bottom line that we have to investigate, according to Rav Soloveitchik, which I don't see a clear answer right now, is when we talk about Eretz Yisrael as an extension of Kedushas Mikdash, or Yerushalayim as an extension of Kedushas Mikdash, how is that impacted, or is it impacted by Churban Habayis? That's the bottom line that we have to study. Okay then? So let's stop here, and maybe I can get some gentlemen to return this.
shall we talk about the use it tomorrow?
I don't know, if you can just make a note where you're putting it, so if we need it,
Let's take a picture of this fine,
yeah.
then you'll know what number it is.